Hello everyone, Ben here from Pixel Portable, and I hope you're well. With Halloween looming around the corner, you may be thinking about playing some games to match that mood. Now, if you own a small emulation device like the MIYOO Mini, or even a big one like the Steamdeck, you might be drowning in options and paralyzed by choice. Well, fear not, for I'll force feed you some fantastically frightening and fearful forays straight into your frontal cortex. So with that, here's my personal top 5 for you to sink your teeth into this Halloween.
Roll the intro.
Coming in at number 5, it's the fast, action-paced sci-fi horror Game Boy Advance classic, Metroid Fusion. While it's not a slow-paced and dimly lit horror game, it does have a great cast of otherworldly terrors hell-bent on taking your life, all to the somber space original soundtrack, the Game Boy Advance title. Metroid Fusion is a solid platformer for the now more humble Game Boy Advance, but it shouldn't be overlooked, as there's plenty of moments where you'll catch your heart in your mouth, as well as some pulse-pounding action. Best of all, if you wanted to play this on a bigger screen, it's now available on Nintendo Switch Online, so it's never been more accessible. Go on, give it a try. Just don't blame me if it swallows whole your entire weekend. In at number 4, I spent some time stuck on this choice, between this and Alien 3, but in at number 4, it's Super Ghouls and Ghosts for the SNES. Up for Super Ghouls and Ghosts for one reason. The most frightening thing about this game isn't the endless spawning horrors of the dark armies of hell, but it is in fact the difficulty. Super Ghouls and Ghosts is a lot like how modern games use Dark Souls as a measuring stick for difficulty. The exception being that I've actually completed all 3 Dark Souls multiple times, and even used different various mods and self-imposed restrictions, all aimed at making the game even harder than it originally was. Whereas I've only completed Super Ghouls and Ghosts once, and that was on the Switch, where I could roll back any mistake by a couple of seconds because it has a rollback feature on the emulator. So technically speaking, I've cheated to beat Ghouls and Ghosts. And I'm glad I did, because I didn't need that kind of suffering in my life, and I'll never accept how do or die the jumping mechanics feel in that game. However, it's Halloween, and some of you might be looking into a night of actual suffering. So, in that case, I present to you a great way to inflict said suffering onto yourself with this SNES iconic classic. Beware, coward. In at number 3, time for something lighthearted in design, but still in theme for that Halloween execution. Splatterhouse 𝖍𝖆𝖑𝖑𝖔𝖬𝑡 came crawling out of the ground and into the Nintendo Entertainment home console system all the way back in 1989. Now I won't spoil too much about this game because the ending is actually quite hilarious, but what I will tell you is that you can look forward to some very out-of-nowhere gore and a fight with a vampire inspired by Michael Jackson, complete with a thriller dance-off. This ticks the box for being both lighthearted in design, while still managing to pack in some pretty decent gore and Halloween vibes. Beware, coward. In at number 2, Night Trap for the Sega CD.
Side of the lake have been disappearing right and left.
Local authorities didn't have a clue until our surveillance teams tapped into the winery house right there. We suspect they're using the winery house as a cover, and they're getting anyone who stumbles onto their scheme, whatever that is.
They have pictures of all the girls. Their heights, weights, and blood types on the back. Ew! Sadie, you're making a mess.
That tastes like blood.
Be careful. These people are into something a lot worse than what we thought. I think they're vampires.
What? Did you say vampires?
What are they?
Well, they're called augurs, or augs, and they're like a vampire.
We have the whole house surrounded. I think these might be vampires we're up against here.
Vampires!
Vampires? You gotta be jabbing me.
The year is 1992, and Night Trap is an interactive movie where we overwatch a group of teenage girls at a sleepover. Okay, that sounds like I'm trying to get you arrested, but I assure you we're doing this for their own benefit, because there's a local infestation of vampires I need to keep watch. We're tapped into the oddly placed surveillance cameras, overseeing the footage, and our job is to activate traps when we see any possible threats. Now, we can look for clues as we play visually and cycle through the cameras, or we can listen to conversations brought in through the audio to help us with information. It's a classic 1990s B-movie, except we're actually able to interact with the world. Now, while this game has been cited as being one of the worst video games of all time, I think its aesthetic charm is overlooked, and while the dialogue might cause irreparable cringe damage,
We're in this huge house with all your friends. We have telephones, we have a car.
you know it's the kind of apt suffering that you need this Halloween. And besides, if the girls annoy you enough, no one would blame you if you just let nature take its course.
Beware, coward.
Last on this list, but a franchise you likely expected, it's Resident Evil Gaiden for the Game Boy Color. There isn't a lot on the Game Boy Color that fits the demand of Halloween, but Resident Evil Gaiden manages to not only meet that demand, but also exceed expectations from the now very limited hardware of the Game Boy Color. The setting of an infested cruise ship does a great job of making you feel trapped at all times, and while you can run, you can't hide. The combat is very fun and reminds me of attacking in Undertale. And the puzzles are as expected from a Resident Evil game, but interestingly enough, it's actually the story that will get you hooked. Now, the games have been regarded as non-canon, as they do contradict quite a lot of the mainline established story, but if you can push that to the side, you'll find yourself really enjoying this adventure. And on a Game Boy Color too, that's kinda cool. Hope you enjoyed this list of Halloween must-plays. I've tried to avoid the more common picks and give you a nice wide range of games to play on the NES, SNES, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and even the Sega CD. So that's my 5 picks. But I'm kinda interested. What are your 5 picks? Let me know in the comments. As for me, I'm going to be having non-stop recurring nightmares of being locked in a SingStar cabinet, while a giant 100-foot head comes barreling out from the cold dark of space, screaming as it consumes me, who is equally screaming back.
I hunger.
So, plenty to look forward to, right? Bye for now.
When we go into the shop,